So I guess, sir, you are part of this panel, and we'll just have you switch seats with whomever has finished testifying so you can deliver your testimony. Okay, go right ahead.
Good afternoon, Chairman Gray and other council members. My name is Allison Sheedy. I'm a resident of Chevy Chase, D.C. in Ward 3. I'm a parent, an attorney, and a chicken owner. I grew up in the D.C. area, and I've lived and worked in the city for over a decade. I'm a taxpayer. As I will also briefly discuss, I sponsored an online petition that gathered well over 700 signatures supporting backyard chickens in D.C. in just under 2 weeks. Now, I did hear that the marijuana petition gathered over 1,000 signatures, but this is a little more esoteric, so I think 700 signatures is still pretty good. And I'm submitting that petition along with the comments from some of the supporters as part of my testimony today. I'm part of a growing constituency who owns chickens in the district. My family actually has a permit from the Department of Health that was signed by Dr. Nesbitt to keep backyard chickens under the terms of Rule 24902 of the DC Municipal Regulations. It was an arduous process to obtain that permit, but we did so because our 4 chickens are my children's pets. We enjoy gathering their eggs, and they've provided a source of joy and delight for my family and our neighborhood. We also relied on the regulation that is currently on the books before investing in a chicken coop and bringing the animals into our lives. My family and many others were dismayed to learn just 3 weeks ago that the Department of Health is attempting to change the current law on backyard chickens by inserting language into the mayor's proposed budget that would make keeping chickens illegal.
Actually, this is the mayor's budget, so let me make that absolutely clear, okay?
All right. I appreciate you hearing from me today. I understand that everyone here has many more urgent priorities than regulating backyard chickens. But if there's a real public health concern in D.C. with backyard chickens, and one has not been articulated as far as I've heard, and I have to say I'm skeptical that one exists, considering D.C. elementary schools are allowed to have chicken coops, changing the law through the budgetary process is not the appropriate way to address those concerns. The budgetary route that is being proposed does not protect citizens' rights. It does not provide adequate notice or opportunity to study the issue, to allow D.C. residents or council members or other interested parties, like those in the broader environmental community, to comment on any health concerns or talk about the benefits of people keeping small flocks of chickens. If there are real public health concerns, I would like to see the studies associated with them. I would like to see the data. And if there are no studies and no data and no analysis, then the sphere of backyard chickens is just someone's uninformed opinion. And I sincerely hope we don't live in a city that regulates based on ignorance, because that strikes me as very dangerous. If, on the other hand, the concern is that the Department of Health is underfunded and understaffed and doesn't have the resources to regulate backyard chickens under the current regulation, it seems to me there are a number of solutions that could ease any perceived strain. First, numerous other cities across the country have adopted common sense approaches to keeping backyard chickens, and we could look to those regulations. New York City is probably a very good example because it's denser and more populated than DC, and backyard hens are permitted in all 5 boroughs. In New York City, there's no restriction on the number of chickens you can keep, no requirement that a coop be kept a certain distance from any residence, and no required license. You simply cannot keep a rooster, and you can't create nuisance conditions in terms of noise, smell, and otherwise. And there have been no widely reported problems in New York. There are also other animal licensing regimes in place in the District of Columbia today that could be equally efficient ways to deal with backyard chickens. I would point to DC Code 903.1, which permits pigeon coops in DC. You have to send in a license, get a certain percentage of neighborhood sign-on, and submit a nominal fee, and it's really just paperwork. So again, there are workable solutions that allow backyard chickens to be part of an ecologically and progressive city environment. Many, many cities have such regulations. DC, in fact, is one of them already. And those approaches deserve to be studied as part of a deliberative legislative process. The language changing the current law and outlawing backyard chickens in DC simply does not belong in the mayor's budget. Over 700 people who support the ability to raise backyard chickens have signed the petition. I started 2 weeks ago. The vast majority are DC residents, and I invite you to look at the comments, which are really quite informative. They show that DC residents are passionate about this issue and that any change to the law should not be done in secret, but through the proper legislative process. Thank you very much.
Appreciate your testimony. Go right ahead, sir.
Good afternoon. Thank you for listening. My name is Dan McInnes. I, too, am a chicken owner, and I've lived in the district since 1989. I moved here after graduating from Yale, and then I subsequently attended Georgetown University Law Center. I am a practicing attorney. I have submitted more extensive written testimony, but in brief, I'm testifying today because I understand that the Department of Health is telling people that current D.C. law prohibits chickens. This claim is false. The position by the Department of Health is contrary to the plain reading of the D.C. Animal Control Statute and a binding municipal regulation, nonsensical given the actual terms of that statute, in conflict with its legislative history. Ownership of chickens and fowls has been part of D.C. probably since D.C. was founded, and it is legal under certain conditions. I know this because I've extensively studied D.C. Animals Control Statute and the associated municipal regulation. The undisputed fact is that this municipal regulation 24-902, has been in effect and enforced since at least the 1980s, and families like ours who can meet the terms of that regulation can currently legally possess backyard chickens. In brief, this regulation allows ownership of chickens without a license if a coop can be located beyond 50 feet of a residence and neighbors have provided written consent. It also provides some other common sense health and safety regulations, such as prohibiting access by rodents to a coop. The terms, albeit more strict than many other cities' chicken regulations, are reasonable. So what is the supposed problem? DOH has argued to us and apparently to the mayor that the D.C. City Council outlawed chickens through an amendment to D.C.'s Animal Control Statute. This claim is frivolous. Briefly, what happened is approximately 6 years after the institution of home rule, the City Council proposed and enacted the city's first animal control statute. It regulated at-large and dangerous animals. Of relevance here, it also prohibited people who own chickens from changing the natural color of a baby chicken, duckling, other fowl, or rabbit. In other words, you could keep a chicken as long as you did not adulterate it. That provision remains in effect today. In 1993, the act was again amended, and this is the amendment that the Department of Health apparently relies upon. Again, this was motivated by the desire to regulate dangerous and exotic animals, specifically wolf hybrid dogs. It had nothing to do with chickens. It specifically allows things like common cage birds. Chickens are the most common cage bird in the world. In sum, the City Council over 15 years ago enacted a prohibition against certain exotic and dangerous animals. Chickens are neither. Chickens are no different than any other pet that are unquestionably allowed in D.C., and the district law already recognizes that fact. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Go right ahead, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is my name is Oliver Friendly. I'm a fourth-generation Washingtonian. I'm a 10-year resident of Brookland. I'm a parent, and I also have chickens. And I'm seeking the committee's support in turning back the improper...
Is that your last name or the description of the kind of person you are?
I feel like with the name, you have to try to be that kind of person, so I do my best. The mayor came to my son's co-op at the Department of Parks and Recreation yesterday, and we had a discussion about this, and I worked very hard to be a friendly. I totally did. I have longer written testimony as well, but I just want to restate what Allison said, that my 3-year-old son, every morning, the first thing he wants to do is go check on the chickens. We have 4 chickens. We have a large enough property that they can stay 50 feet from a house. We have the written consent of everybody whose property is within 100 feet of our property line, and everybody in our residential square. In total, I got 97 signatures. I instead want to address 2 points. One is that the arguments made by the Department of Health against pet chickens don't make much sense. They claim they want to ban chickens because of the risk of salmonella. This quickly falls apart, though, when you realize that even if DOH does get its way, it plans to let schools keep chickens, as they do now. To me, this strikes me as rather odd. If chickens are so very dangerous carriers of disease, why should we put them in the midst of hundreds of students 5 days a week? DOH also currently licenses pigeon coops, far more liberally than chicken coops, requiring only 51% of your neighbor's consent, and they can be 20 feet from your house, and you can have 50 pigeons. Even though pigeons are far more likely to carry salmonella, and they even carry deadly parasites, as well as the bubonic plague. DOH cites a rise in salmonella cases in cities with pet chickens, but if you do a little research, you'll see that only one case nationwide can be linked to backyard chickens, whereas over 250,000 cases a year are linked to grocery store eggs. So statistically, as a DC resident, you should have a pet chicken and not go to Giant. For residents of Wards 7 and 8, pet chickens provide a much-needed supply of healthy protein from their eggs, and the health benefits of eggs are many. They are low in saturated fats, high in omega-3s, and 2 eggs a day provide a full supply of protein. Once the coop is purchased and built, the maintenance costs of pet chickens are incredibly low. They literally eat your garden waste. They eat grass, weeds, mosquitoes, black flies, food scraps, and waste from your kitchen. In Ward 7 and 8, there was one, now 3, grocery stores, but it still renders much of the area a food desert. And by banning pet chickens, the mayor is further restricting the community's access to healthy food choices. I hope the committee can stand up to the mayor's improper and spiteful effort and help DC become one of these many progressive cities with New York, Baltimore, Richmond, Portland, Chicago, Austin, many, many cities across the United States. And we feel that when all the facts are explored, we are confident the council will conclude that we should continue to allow this practice, which is clearly permitted by various sections of DC city law, and that the proposed budget writer would confuse rather than clarify the law and seems more like an act of spite for people trying to stand up for their pets than proper lawmaking. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Friendly. How are you?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Winky Krigler, and my husband and I have lived in D.C. since 1976 and have had backyard hens for the past 5 years. Chickens are great pets and have been treasured companions of people for thousands of years, and there are several reasons for this. First, there is something soothing about chickens. Nothing relieves the daily pressure of D.C. living like a visit to the hens. I invite you to come by next time you're having a bad day. It is somehow a very zen experience to hang out with the girls. Because of their calming and accepting nature, chickens are currently used as therapy animals for autistic children, to treat adults with depression and dementia, as well as helping America's veterans who are suffering psychological aftereffects of war. Second, they are smart. A 2014 Scientific American article titled "The Startling Intelligence of the Common Chicken" confirms that chickens are much more socially sophisticated and intelligent than previously understood. The Humane Society agrees, stating on its website, "These birds have fascinated scholars and researchers since the dawn of Western civilization, and recent studies are beginning to reveal the depths of their complexity and cognitive ability. Each of our chickens has a distinct, interesting personality. Tina Fey is the bossy one, Maggie Thatcher is the curious one, Chelsea Clinton and Ivanka Trump are the most cuddly, and yes, they are best friends, by the way. Third, backyard chickens produce the world's best eggs. You really can't imagine how differently they taste than store-bought eggs."
You do have objective evidence to support that statement, don't you, Ms.
Yes.
Wrigley?
Fourth, they eat ticks that can carry Lyme and other diseases, mosquitoes that bring both disease and annoyance, and other undesirable bugs like stink bugs. They also eat most of our food scraps, reducing our waste and the need to compost. Finally, chickens provide great enjoyment and entertainment for family, friends, and neighbors. You should see a hard-fought game of chicken keep-away over a grape. It is really hilarious. Backyard hens make a city feel more friendly. In Seattle, where our son lives, a neighborhood walk often includes a chat with hens kept in side-yard coops between the house and the sidewalk. As you can tell, we're very attached to our chickens. They are a wonderful, safe, calming, and productive part of our lives, as they have been for millions of American families since colonial days, including in D.C. We urge the council not to ban backyard chickens in D.C. Thank you.
Yeah, good. I was going to ask you all to switch chairs so you'd have a chance to give your testimony as well.
I'm Tim Haar, Washington resident, and with my wife Winky, we own chickens in Ward 3. I won't give all my testimony because Oliver and some others have given the facts already, but it is true that from New York to LA, from Miami to Seattle, from Atlanta to Anchorage, and all the cities in between, Denver, Cleveland, they all allow and often encourage chickens. Our two closest neighbors, Baltimore and Richmond, allow chickens, and there are more cities every month that are adding that capability. There's no good reason for DC to move in the opposite direction. Backyard chickens pose no significant health or safety risks. If they did, these great cities wouldn't allow them. If they did, we wouldn't have them in our schools. If they did, we wouldn't have centuries of American families living with chickens and having their child as the first responsibility at a young age go out and gather eggs and feed the chickens. As you've heard before, health concerns regarding chickens are really no greater than other familiar pets. The CDC lists 21 diseases humans can catch from dogs, 16 from cats, and only 6 from chickens. And nobody's talking about banning dogs or cats. The cases of salmonella and other diseases attributable to backyard chickens are just a tiny fraction of those cases. Those cases are generally, as has been said, due to people eating unclean food. And even to the extent there is a small risk with chickens, it's very easy to avoid it. You just wash your hands, you don't kiss your chickens, and you keep them outside instead of in the house. That's what the CDC tells us. I want to address the other concerns that have possibly been raised. First, there's no legitimate noise concern. Chickens are about as loud as cats, and no one here is trying to keep roosters.
Well, we're licensing those too,
Well, my guess is you'll hear from some people on that.
No doubt.
As long as food is kept in a proper storage container and feeder, chicken coops do not attract rats. Rats are not known to eat chicken poop, and even if they were, the chicken poop is regularly picked up and composted. It makes some of the best compost there is. In fact, the city of Austin, Texas, offers a $75 stipend to people who will have chickens because it takes scrap food out of the dumps and it composts it to be used in gardens. Everywhere the chickens are, they're eating mosquitoes, they're eating ticks, they're eating other harmful bugs. So they actually create a safer environment where they are. Chickens have been a safe and beloved and productive friend of man and part of American life since colonial days, including in the District of Columbia. We urge that the anti-chicken amendment or provision to this law not end this long tradition. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Haar. How are you, sir?
Great, how are you?
Great.
Good
Identify
afternoon.
yourself, if you don't mind.
My name is Stephen Boone, and we have our 2 hens, Greta and Tilly, and they're part of our family. But I think the main crux of the matter is folding a public policy issue into a covert line item in the BSA. When DC moves to encroach on private property rights and empower law enforcement to forcibly impound pets from its constituencies' households, this truly commands a legislative process, not a budgetary gimmick. Legislation is comprised of input from citizens, subject matter experts, and various government resources and agencies. This needs to be taken under consideration. I feel strongly that this government is worst, and a textbook example of mayoral overreach. The mayor has mentioned that the chicken ban has been in the works for years now, and I'm interested in the inputs that impacted her decision. We would like to know whether UDC's Center for Urban Agriculture was consulted when placing the ban in the budget. Also, was Tommy Wells consulted? Mr. Wells now runs the DOEE and is considered by the community as the father of the backyard chickens in DC. Historically, chicken bans have anti-immigrant undertones. These laws go back over 100 years in the United States in various communities and originally were structured to harass recent immigrants. Did the Bowser administration solicit any expert opinions regarding this matter? And how about DCPS? They raise chickens at various schools around the district. The mayor is concerned about salmonella in rats, but has she tapped the various scientific knowledge pools and presented data-driven facts to back up her position? Many other states and localities are moving in the other direction, from both the progressive and conservative standpoints. Progressives are pro-backyard chickens due to the locally sourced food origins and positive environmental impact. For example, Portland, Oregon's program is under the city's food sustainability program, and the city's website explicitly outlines what is legally permissible with and without a city permit. On the other hand, conservatives are more concerned about private property rights, as seen with the pending Texas Senate bill, SB 1620, which would legally allow anyone in the state of Texas to have up to 6 hens on private property. All of our neighbors in close proximity are pro-backyard chicken. Given our close distance to Melvin Hazen Park and the deer presence in Ward 3, neighbors ask us to place the chickens in their backyards to control ticks that potentially transmit Lyme disease. Our property footprint requires 0 yard waste and minimal food waste, reducing the waste management burden. We shred all of our yard waste and put it in the chicken run, and the non-meat food waste is consumed by the chickens. The results produces the highest quality mulch that is then redistributed throughout the rest of our property. And lastly, the chickens have been with us for 3 years, and they are our pets. We love them, and they are part of our family. My wife's career is dedicated to end-of-life care, and at times it can be quite depressing. The chickens are a positive pillar at the end of her day that helps her address the fact that her job does have sad situations. Thank you for hearing my testimony today.
Thank you very much. We've been joined by my colleague, Councilmember Mary Che, who represents Ward 3, and I want to give, once I get through my round, I want to give her an opportunity for an opening statement and any questions that she may have, because actually she and I have had some interesting discussions about this issue. I'd like to ask each of you a question. How long did it take each of you individually to prepare your testimony for this? How long did it take you, Ms. Sheedy?
It's been a few hours.
A few hours, okay.
We've been thinking about this for a couple weeks now.
Okay. Yes, sir.
My name is Aaron Rosenzweig, and it took me about an hour to prepare.
An hour, okay. You haven't even given your testimony yet, have you?
No.
Why don't you go ahead? I know you're just waiting with bated breath.
Oh, you want me to go now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. My name is Aaron Rosenzweig. I live with my wife, 2 children, and 6 lovely pet chickens. Are you aware that Austin, Texas, with nearly 1 million citizens, will egg you on with $75?
No pun intended, of course. Right?
It was probably more than an hour to put that together.
You're turning this into a shell game, sir.
Exactly. Yeah. You see, it's part of their goal of zero food waste going into landfills and intelligent composting. If you're going to remove any liberty from your city residents, there better be a darn good reason. What is your reason for banning chickens in D.C.? Would you visit Allison and Dan's home and tell their children your way of life belongs elsewhere? A chicken is not a farm animal. It is a bird. It was originally a woodland creature. Yes, you may find a chicken on a farm, but you'll find dogs and cats there too. A chicken makes a wonderful urban companion. A chicken is not a mammal. Its normal body temperature is 104 degrees. Their body chemistry is so different, truly alien to our own. Contrast this with a dog or a cat, both of which are mammals. Both contain roundworms, which will cause blindness in human children if we don't administer deworming medication to those pets. Dogs and cats are the leading cause of blindness among poor households in America. A chicken learns faster than a dog. In fact, the best dog training programs start by teaching how to train chickens. It's simple. You feel encouraged when a chicken follows your commands, which gives you the confidence and skills to make training stubborn dogs easier. Chickens are pets with benefits. They sometimes give you eggs. They always eat ticks, slugs, and other nasties. They are cheap therapy because you can't help but smile when you see them. Everything about them is useful, even their poo. A 20-pound bag of chicken poo will cost you $15 or more. Their poo is one of the few kinds of fertilizer that is safe to use on vegetable gardens for human consumption. This is not true of dog or cat poo, which would be toxic. Chickens lack teeth. They don't bite. Chickens don't carry rabies. Nobody has ever been maimed or mauled to death by a chicken. Chickens don't transfer blindness to humans. The CDC lists the number of diseases we can get from animals as 6 from chickens, 16 from cats, and a whopping 20 diseases from dogs. If you are serious about human safety concerns, you'll be banning dogs way ahead of chickens. And we don't want to ban dogs. Let's be honest. If you think that chickens make your community look bad, then you should live in an HOA where everything is dictated right down to the color of your home. Municipal government should not be making judgment calls about what is prim and proper. If you live without an HOA, then personal freedom should be tolerated. Let's be brutally honest. People want a distinct line between pets and food. Blur that line, and they start to develop a conscience. If our way of life causes your children to stop eating chicken nuggets, maybe you shouldn't have been eating them to begin with. When you create laws, remember they are not for prevention. Murder is outlawed, but it still happens. Laws only enable us to take corrective action. Make laws that limit noise, limit smell, limit nuisance after it occurs. Apply it to all animals and all hobbies. Don't prohibit people from loving, living, and enjoying life the way they see fit. Allow chickens. You might like it. If you don't, no harm, no foul.
Would you like to spell foul for us so we're absolutely clear?
I put all the claims in here. It's all in the packet, from CDC and from Alston. One other thing about the tobacco, because I heard that and I heard we were all interested in that. Young people, when they see the Surgeon General's warning of tobacco that it can cause death, they feel invincible. That will happen later. They don't care. If we want to try something different, on the back of that label, on the back of that pack of cigarettes, tell them the truth. Causes sexual impotence.
Okay. We'll be sure that we advocate for that, okay?
I'm confused.
Yeah. You said it took you about an hour to prepare that?
Yes.
I'm amazed that you were able to get that all done in an hour. I'm going to give you 2 hours. How's that?
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Har, how long did it take you to prepare your testimony?
About 2 days.
2 days, but not continuously, right?
Probably, if you add it all up, it was about 2 days, because I was trying to find any reason, trying to prove a negative, trying to prove there's really no problem with chickens and be ready for any claim that there was. Takes a while.
So we'll give you 48 hours. How's that?
That's fine.
Okay. Ms. Krigler, how long did it take you to do yours?
Half a day.
Half a day. That would be 12, wouldn't it? How long did it take you, Mr. McInnes?
Well, I filed a lawsuit, which I won, and researching that lawsuit and writing it and ultimately turning it into testimony took me about 4 days. Since you're not at the microphone, I'll just have to try to do the math on it. So 96 hours of work it took you? Well, I did sleep during this, about say 40 hours.
40 hours, okay. And how about you, sir? How long did it take you?
Probably about 4 hours.
About 4 hours, okay. And Mr. Friendly?
Probably 4 hours for the testimony, and then we've spent weeks organizing the petition and call in to various council members' offices.
Can you give me an estimate of how many hours you think you've devoted to this issue?
Probably in 40 to 50 hours in the last 3 weeks.
40, 50 hours. I'm just calculating that because, I don't know, it's 120, 130, 140 hours that collectively you all have devoted to one of the most ridiculous issues that I think we have had to endure here. I'm not new to this. I've been on the council previously, served along with my friend to my left, and served as mayor, and now I'm back on the council. And I can't believe, given all the health issues that we have to address, importantly in the District of Columbia, that we should be addressing, especially the further east you go in the District of Columbia, that we have before us a piece of public policy proposal that would ban chickens in the District of Columbia. I don't know if you heard my opening statement, but I tried to make clear the context within which I look at this. In addition to banning chickens and licensing cats and requiring that dog excrement be taken, gotten up within 24 hours, which I'm again looking for the barometer to be able to measure that. I guess we'd hire a couple of staff to go, regulate people's yards and make sure that the dogs are not.
Carbon dating, maybe.
It is good to have a little levity in this process periodically. I was struck by are you an attorney, Mr. McGinnis? Did you get your degree from Yale Law? It's a great law school. My daughter is a graduate of Yale Law School, and I think Councilmember Che's daughter is a graduate of Yale. Yeah. So, anyway, it is amazing to me that we have put our citizens through the process of having to defend something that should not have to be defended. I assume that on behalf of the mayor that Dr. Nesbitt will tell us why this is a good idea. But, in lieu of that, I think it's a terrible idea. And I have no intention of supporting this. Councilmember Che and I have talked about this. I don't think it's germane to the budget. I don't think it's good public policy in the first place. But if someone wanted to do this, legislation should have been introduced. There should be a hearing on it, which I doubt will ever see the light of day. It won't be from me, I can tell you. So, again, I don't often apologize for people having to come down and testify before the council because it is an important part of your civic duty, I think, to take positions on those things that are important to you. But I would love to see you come down to speak to issues that are far more important than this one. Ms. Krigler, you made the offer to come and visit the chickens at your house. I'm going to accept that offer, okay?
Absolutely.
And we'll try to do that, in the next few days.
That would be wonderful.
And you don't have to deliver any testimony when you come, when I come to do that. And maybe
Would you like
somebody,
a cup of coffee or tea?
tea would be great.
All
Yeah,
right.
tea would be great. I'm not a coffee drinker. There's too much, there's caffeine in that, and that makes me jittery. So the tea would be great. But anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Councilmember Che at this point. But I just want to let you know that from the perspective of me as the chair of this committee, these chickens have come home to roost, Councilmember Che.
We're mad as a wet hen.
Again, I want to thank you all for the opportunity to have a little bit of levity in a very serious undertaking today, and as to discuss the investments that we are making and should be making, and perhaps are not making as fully as we should, in the continuing health of the people of the District of Columbia. I couldn't help but be struck by the fact that you mentioned that that the chickens eat mosquitoes, and maybe that's an antidote for Zika. Who knows? I mean, we should do a little research on that and see whether it would be helpful or not. I didn't know that. I have learned something as a result of that. Mr. Rosen, you wanted to say something on that?
Yeah, I can email you later. There's actually a study that just having a chicken in a cage in your bedroom in Africa prevents you from getting bit by mosquitoes. That they somehow sense the chicken and don't want to get close to you either.
I see. Well, you're just a font of information. Councilmember Che.
Your Honor,
Thank you
I
very
just-
much. I'm sorry.
go ahead.
No, go.
Go ahead, Mr. Har.
I've been on the board of a nonprofit that does behavioral health service in the city, and I couldn't agree with you more that we should be spending our time on things like that, which are a huge problem in this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon to all of you. I'm a member of this committee, but we need to be running hither and yon because it's budget season and so on. But I had an opportunity to come up now and to talk about this, and the chairman is quite right. We've had conversations about the items that have been put in the Budget Support Act, and amidst all of the pressing issues that we have in the district in general, but also in this committee itself, I am baffled by the prominence given to these measures. First of all, the matter about the chickens does not even belong in a Budget Support Act. It is not germane to the budget. And second of all, with respect to both the chicken ban and also the licensing of cats, both of those items are items that, if they are going to be put through, have to be put through in the regular way. People have to have an opportunity to be heard. We have to have a full hearing. It shouldn't be smuggled in the middle of a budget to go forward. And then in terms, of the merits, taking up chickens for a second, I happen to live in Ward 3, and Janney Elementary School is in my ward. And it was just 2 days ago that I was there they're painting a mural in the back of Janney. It's going to be fabulous. There's a man going around painting bees all over the world to remind us about honeybees and the danger that they're in. But as we were walking out, we were walking past the cage with the chickens in it, bopping around. And I said to somebody who was walking next to me, I said, whoa, whoa, step back. We're in danger. It's just so absurd that, it almost makes your jaw drop about it. So I just wanted to come up here and add my voice to the chairman's. And we have been talking about this, and I'm very grateful to him for taking up the time to talk about this. As far as I'm concerned, and apparently as he just announced to you, as far as this is going nowhere in the budget. So I want to thank you for coming forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. And don't let this be your last time down here. And I promise the next time you come, certainly with this committee, we'll have something more substantive for you to do. Maybe even serve breakfast.
Oh.
Yeah.
When am I coming for tea with the chairman?
Whatever you. Thank you all very much. Well, they certainly made the mayor look like a damn.
I do want to address a few of the issues proactively that were raised. In regards to the animal provisions that were included, it is not, as you can see, the focus of our budget. The focus of our budget is really around issues that advance Public Health 3.0. We have a few issues where we have been implementing the law as it has been interpreted for several years. The Animal Control Act of 1979 has very clearly, from our perspective and the way the animal control officers have been implementing the law around fowl, has been very clear. We have implemented that law with no challenges, with great cooperation from the community as it relates to backyard fowl. And the definition of a caged bird being very clear around parakeets, cockatoos, et cetera. We were presented with a challenge in 2016 and worked very closely with the Office of the Attorney General to handle a situation where we were presented with a regulation that precedes the current version of the Animal Control Act. So it is not that the department is seeking to ban backyard fowl. We are seeking to have a clarification to what was presented to us and what, in consultation with the Office of Attorney General, when we were presented with a restraining order, appears to be a conflict between regulation and district law. So for our animal control officers to be able to work effectively, we would like to work with you to figure out the best way to do that. The second issue as well is in DC law, DC code and regulation that we need to be able to resolve so our animal control officers can effectively do their job.
Excuse me. Thank you very much, Dr. Nesbitt. I did want to go back to some of the what we spent our time on today, which I guess you can call it policy issues, but it would be a stretch for me, and that was the issue of ostensibly banning backyard chickens, the licensing of cats, and then the way that the issue around dog excrement was addressed also. The issue with the chickens, again, the understanding of many at this stage is that what the mayor is proposing to do is to ban having backyard chickens. Is that your understanding? I mean, that's the witnesses who came today clearly have come to the conclusion, one of whom was, I guess, an attorney who was involved in some case, which I didn't know much about that case until I heard him today.
Yeah.
Mr. McGinnis, I think his name was.
Correct.
And they've taken the position and seem to be supported by others that this is a situation where the mayor is seeking to ban people having backyard chickens. You're saying that's not a proper interpretation?
Correct. So we are seeking to clarify that they are not permissible in the district at present and have not been since 1979. We have been implementing the Animal Control Act as if fowl were not permitted in the district in backyards or to be kept in any domesticated fashion since 1979 per the Animal Control Act. Our animal control officers have been enforcing it that way for several years. We've had a number of complaints, and people have been cited for possessing backyard fowl since that time. And even in recent years, I have some cases before me where people have surrendered them without difficulty. In 2016, when our animal control officers were implementing the 1979 Animal Control Act as they have been since 1979, we were presented with a restraining order, and the individuals who filed the restraining order went back and cited regulations that possibly date back to the 1800s, early 1900s, stating that they were not repealed when the 1979 Animal Control Act was put into place. And that they had the right to be issued a permit from the Department of Health. As the Office of the Attorney General is our representative when these matters occur, we were advised to proceed with issuing that one family a permit and working to resolve the discrepancies that potentially exist. We were advised not to proceed with litigation, and you follow what OAG recommends you to do. That is the only family that has a permit from the Department of Health, and we move forward to clarify as the department had been operating for several years. So if there's no action, I'm not married to how this process plays out. But right now, we're in limbo because the active practice in the District of Columbia since 1979 has been that backyard fowl were not permitted. So however the process needs to play out, there should be some process that clarifies this issue very clearly for the public, for the department, and for the greater good of our community.
And that may be true. But when the Budget Support Act is used as a mechanism for changing laws like this, it often, I won't say always, but it often raises concerns on the part of people that this is some backdoor way of changing something that should have seen the light of day. And that's a part of what we heard today, and a part of some of the complaints that I've heard about this since this issue arose. Why didn't the mayor choose to go another route? And that is something that was far more transparent than the Budget Support Act, because the Budget Support Act is not necessarily all that transparent. I even had a council member bring it to my attention before I had expressed my own views on the matter, and that was that it should have gone through a process where if the mayor wanted to do something legislatively to change a way business is being done or to clarify it, why didn't she send over something to the chairman? Because there's a process, as you well know, for legislation being introduced by the mayor. And that is, take the bill, send it over to the chairman, it automatically gets introduced, and then it's sent to a committee to be addressed, one way or the other. Mm-hmm. The Budget Support Act, to me, is something that's going to have implications for the budget. And that's what I said to the council member who asked me. I said, well, I don't even see how this is germane to the budget. And I still don't see how it's germane to the budget. Maybe there are changes that are needed. I don't know that for a fact, but I don't think it's germane to the budget. But why didn't the mayor use another mechanism than the one that has been used, which has really elevated the sensitivity, for want of a better way of putting it, on the part of those who care about this issue, as all those witnesses who came today stated?
Well, I'll comment on the sensitivity of the issue. I've had several conversations with former council member Tommy Wells. So I believe this.
Yeah, well, he wasn't one of the people that I talked to.
I understand. So I believe this would have been a sensitive issue in any event. We were seeking a technical clarification, which is not an atypical use of the BSA. Two, there is a financial implication for what we're doing because there are fines associated with it as well.
But what was done to work with these people in order to head off the kind of situation that we experience today, and that is people coming in here testifying? I didn't know any of those people who came today until I saw them today.
Well,
They saw their only recourse at this stage is to come down here and testify. Why wasn't something done with them, Dr. Nesbitt, that would have headed off this kind of a fiasco situation that we had today?
Well, Councilmember Gray, there have been several conversations.
With these people?
Correct.
The people in here today?
Correct. One of them admitted that they filed a restraining order against the department. I think that kind of indicates to you what the tone and tenor of the conversations have been. And there were other complaints by community members filed about backyard foul since that particular incident occurred, and those foul were surrendered without incident. Since then, and prior to and I believe it was prior to the submission of the budget, there has been more community push to permit backyard fouls, such that when our animal control officers receive complaints, or when we receive complaints, there is now this reflex position of filing restraining orders against the Department of Health. So I believe we are past the position of coming to some community agreements around it. I believe the people who want to have backyard fowl are very clear on their position, as well as the people who do not want them permitted and complain. And I'm the recipient of those emails as well. So again, I'm not married to the process of how this works, but I believe we need to have some clarifications that currently we have statutes that the individuals who filed restraining orders about say that there's a conflict. OAG agreed that if we took this to court, there may be some confusion even by the judicial branch as to where the law stands currently, so there needs to be some clarification of it. I don't think anybody disagrees with that, but we very clearly need to have a clarification on this, or else we cannot execute our duties as a regulatory agency. And again, Chairman Gray, I'm completely open to how that process plays out.
How many complaints have been filed, and how much enforcement has there been of the law as you interpret it at this stage, which is obviously different than what these folks who were here today interpret the law to be?
In 2015, we had 8 complaints. In 2016, we had 7 complaints, and to date in 2017, we've had 2, and those are officially filed, not necessarily the things that come to me over email with people taking a position one way or the other.
Were these your staff that were enforcing what they interpreted the law to be at that stage?
Correct. So, well, let me not say correct. These are things that come to the Department of Health, and then the animal control officers are, through our contractual agreement with the formerly the Washington Humane Society, and is now simply the Humane Rescue Alliance, right? But not taking a position on this, importantly. That's, I think, something to note. The other piece of it, too, is that there have been a couple of cases that we had to subsequently refer to the Humane Law Enforcement, which is an entity completely separate from the district government, because they have their own a district government agency. They have their own statutory authority because they investigate any instances of animal abuse and neglect. So there were some cases that were reported to us that when we go, there were some concerns that there may have been some issues of abuse and neglect, so HLE had to investigate those.
Well, my suggestion would be at this stage, given the unrest, and that's probably the best euphemism I can find at this stage to label this, given the unrest that exists around this, my suggestion would be that the mayor withdraw this, using the errata letter, which is an approach to address issues around the around the Budget Support Act. That this be withdrawn, and that another process, the legislative process, if you think that needs to be, if there needs to be amended, if it needs to be clarified in some legal way, that the normal process be used to do that, because I think you can tell from my comments today and the comments of the others, and I'll leave, when I say others, I mean the people who testified, that this has virtually no chance of getting through the Budget Support Act at this stage. And rather than have it be just a continuing contentious experience, if you believe there's legitimacy in how the law should be interpreted, what clarifications, what amendments are needed, I would suggest using the normal legislative process to do that, because there's almost no way, there's no chance, in my opinion. The other 12 members of this council can speak for themselves, but I don't think there's any chance that this would get through as a part of the budget in the Budget Support Act at this stage.
Right. My goal is to impress upon you that there are two pieces that have a conflict, and I would not want you to have the impression that these are non-issues for us as a regulating agency.
That really isn't exactly my issue.
No, I understand your recommendation, and I hear your recommendation. I also I want to make sure that you understand we have a challenge before us. My folks need to be able to responsibly execute their duties, and we need to be able to communicate that there are and recognize that there are people on both sides of this issue. If we're not in a position to act, because right now I'm really not doing anything, and so I have to, for people who are complaining, explain to them why I'm not. And I want you to be able to, if they're communicating to you, explain as well, because we're working to figure out the best way to move through this, and then have an official position as a city on what we're going to do about Backyard Fowl. We've got to be very clear about how we're moving forward with this.
Well, that's my take on it at this stage, and so
both of us can walk away from here saying, we're going to figure this out and have a pathway forward, but be able to be responsive to our constituencies. Yeah,
well, I'm saying something beyond that. I'm saying that I would ask you to recommend to the mayor that she withdraw this, because there's no chance, in my opinion, of it getting through. I think, frankly, the less time we spend on this issue in the future, until we have a real, if there's a problem and there's a real solution to it, fine. But it makes the city look silly.
I don't disagree. I understand what you're saying, but there is a likelihood that I am not going to spend less time on this issue if I can't communicate to the constituency broadly that we are not still paying attention to this in some kind of way where we're actually going to resolve it.
Yeah, well, okay. It ain't going to be resolved. Excuse me for putting it. It ain't going to be resolved through the Budget Support Act.
If it's not the BSA, I'm understanding that, but.
That I'll leave.
Okay.
I'll leave to you whatever you say to the mayor in terms of what the course of action is that she pursues. I mean, if she could leave it where it is, if she chooses to, and then I'll be honest with you, I will recommend to the council that it be thrown out on the fact that it's not germane, to the Budget Support Act, not germane to the budget.
I want to communicate to you, Chairman Gray, that I'm not just asking you for what to say to the mayor.
I'm just making a recommendation. You can do what you will, of course, I know that.
We want to say something to the constituencies broadly. So you and I will continue this dialogue on the best way to approach this moving forward.
Okay, well, you know where I stand.
I know where you stand.
Okay. What about the cats issue? That one is another one with the licensing of cats. You know what? And here we are at 9:40. Yeah, 9:40, talking about what I think is a ludicrous issue that we got to deal with in the budget, because we had all these witnesses down here. We had 135 people who were on the witness list, and if I took out the numbers of people who were here to talk about
10,
chickens
12.
and cats and dog excrement, it probably would have reduced the list by about 20 people, at least. So I'm only talking about this because I have to at this stage in order to be able to come to some kind of, I think, hopefully amicable solution to be able to move forward. And as I've said to you before, I won't blindside you. I'll be as transparent as I possibly can on where I stand. And that's where I stand on this issue.
Correct.
So,
the Department of Health is full of complex issues.
Of course it is.
Animal services.
And that's what I want to talk about is the human beings
Animal
that
services is
rely
part of
upon?
the Department of Health. You know, in some jurisdictions, it's its own agency. But, like where I came from, but so our recommendation for cat licensing has some grounding. Other jurisdictions have it. Louisville has it. We've heard the positions of other people here. We have data and evidence to support it. How much do you want that? You want me to talk about it extensively? I'm trying to be
No, I
sensitive.
don't want you to talk about it extensively.
Okay.
I just wanted you to understand where I stand.
Yes, I understand where you stand. That's why I'm trying to progress us to the issues, the other issues you want to talk about.
I ain't supporting licensing
The
cats,
cats.
okay?
I've been, as you pointed out earlier, I've been in the chamber the whole time,
Yep.
and I know where you stand on these issues. We have heard it, and we are very clear. But you know, I also wanted to make sure people understood as well. We don't recommend things that we believe are going to be onerous and burdensome to the population. We offer free vaccination clinics around the city. We are actually in the middle of that process currently, both for dogs and cats currently. We also did not implement this to be a harm to the community cat population as well. And these programs have existed in tandem in other jurisdictions where you both have a cat licensing program and a trap, neuter, and release program. So these things, we don't just willy-nilly do things, and we don't do things without communicating with people. And when we do things and people believe this is their only forum for them, I think you see that I go out and I talk to people and we're exchanging contact information, because I want people to know that they can call me and they can talk to me about things that they have a concern about, and keep the lines of communication and dialogue
I know
open.
you do, Dr. Ness. That's one of the reasons
Beyond
why I
this.
encourage you to talk further with those young people who
Right.
are here today, because I wanted them to be able to know who you are and to have a relationship, with you around something that is hugely important
Absolutely.
to the city.
Absolutely.
If you notice, I didn't recommend that you talk to the chicken advocates and the cat, licensing opponents, I should say,
Correct.
because that was, I won't say it was frivolous, but I would say this: I think we spent a lot of time on an issue today that I wish we hadn't spent the time on. So again, let me just underscore, you know where I stand on chickens.
I know where you stand
know
on
where,
chickens.
You know where I stand
On
on
cats.
the licensing of cats. The dog excrement thing, I can't even figure out how anybody would effectively enforce that. Is somebody going to have some kind of calendar?
I would encourage you to think about it from the perspective of there's passive enforcement and there's having an enforcement tool available to you when you need it.
Okay. Well, I'll keep that in mind.
Yes.
And we can continue to talk. We can continue to talk, if you wish, about the other two issues that are associated with the Budget Support Act.
Yeah.
But I would urge
The lobby permit, as long as it matches.
Yeah.
We don't. The number is not important to us. As
Well,
long as it
again, I
matches.
would just urge that the mayor, using the errata letter as a mechanism, withdraw these two issues. And if she and you continue to think that there's a legitimate legislative issue here, then come at it another way. Come at it where, you put a piece of legislation on the table, put it before the council, and the council can do what it will at this stage. And you might even get, this is your call, of course, you might even get the Attorney General to opine on the existing legislation and what the Attorney General believes is the obligation of the District of Columbia with respect to the existing law. Again, you can do what you will.
Duly
with that.
noted.
Yep, okay. Let's see, how long do we spend on that one? Let me move to teen pregnancy prevention, because you had it in. Well, let's see, we've been here now. We've already eclipsed the 12-hour mark, which is incredible. I had no idea that we would be here this long. But I appreciate your perseverance, Dr. Nesbitt, and that of your team over here. And actually, they're all still awake. So, again, I thank you all very much for being here to have the discussion around the budget. We'll see where we go. And we've covered the waterfront today. We've covered all the issues affecting human beings, and we've dealt with chickens and cats and the like as well. So with that having been said, the time is now 11:47 p.m., and this hearing is
Still the same
adjourned. I was hoping that we would get to the point, in another 13 minutes where we could say we started
new day.
we started on one day and we finished on another, but we won't do that. Anyway, thank you all very much, and this hearing is adjourned.
Thank you.